the emperor, who could not see his empire. How Zhao Gao isolated the second emperor. After Li Si died, the Qin court became quieter. But this was not the quietness of stability. It was the quietness of fewer voices. Fusu was dead. General Meng Tian and Meng Yi were dead. Li Si was dead. By this point, there were still officials around the second emperor. But fewer and fewer people could bring the real empire into the emperor's sight. In the previous episode, we saw why Li Si became dangerous to Zhao Gao. Not because he openly rebelled, but because he knew what had happened at Sandune Platform. He knew how Huhai became the second emperor of Qin. He knew how Zhao Gao had used documents, commands, and the name of a dead emperor to reshape the succession. After Li Si was removed, Zhao Gao's problem changed. He was no longer only fighting individual enemies. He had to control how the emperor understood the empire. Welcome to the Dragon Archive, where Chinese history is told through story, evidence, and the shadows left behind. The story moves back to 209 BCE. In the first year of the second emperor's reign, Qin Sheng and Wu Guang rose in rebellion at Dazexiang. This uprising did not destroy Qin immediately, but it opened a crack. After that, anti-Qin forces across the eastern regions began to grow. By the second year of the second emperor's reign, around 208 BCE, Zhou Zhang, a commander sent by Qin Sheng, advanced westward toward the Qin heartland. The Shiji records the emperor's reaction in simple words. What should be done? The second emperor was shocked. This detail matters. He was not completely unaware of the outside crisis. The news did reach the court. The real question is what the court did with that news. At that time, Shofu Zhang Han proposed a solution. There was no time to mobilize nearby counties. But there were many convicts working at Mount Li. They could be pardoned, armed, and sent to fight the rebels. The original words were, "There are many convicts at Mount Li. I ask that they be pardoned and given weapons to strike the rebels." The second emperor agreed. Zhang Han led these pardoned convicts into battle and temporarily stopped Zhou Zhang's army. As a military response, it worked for the moment. But as a sign of state health, it was alarming. An empire was now using convicts from an imperial tomb project to defend the region near its capital. That was not normal governance. It was emergency survival. The deeper problem was inside the palace. Zhao Gao understood that rebellions outside would continue. But for him, the most immediate danger was not only the rebels. It was anyone near the emperor who could still speak directly about reality. If ministers could meet the second emperor, they could speak about rebellions, forced labor, military failures, and local suffering. Then the emperor might begin to doubt Zhao Gao. He might begin to rely on the outer court again. So Zhao Gao had to change how the emperor handled government. According to the Shiji, Zhao Gao told the second emperor that the first emperor had ruled for a long time, so ministers did not dare to act improperly. But now the emperor was young and newly enthroned. How could he sit in court and decide affairs together with high ministers? If mistakes appeared, the ministers would see his weakness. Then Zhao Gao said the key line. The Son of Heaven calls himself I. His voice should not be heard. On the surface, this sounded like advice about imperial dignity. In reality, it removed the emperor from the court. Zhao Gao was telling the second emperor that being unseen and unheard would make him seem more imperial. The result was clear. The Shiji says, from then on, the second emperor often stayed inside the Forbidden Palace and decided affairs with Zhao Gao. After that, high ministers rarely gained audience with the emperor. At the same time, rebels became more numerous. The emperor still existed. The court still existed. Reports still existed. But between the emperor and the real empire stood Zhao Gao. Even then, some officials still tried to speak about the real problem. Feng Kuji, Li Si, and Feng Jai once submitted advice together. They said that rebels were rising across the eastern regions. Qin armies had killed many people, but the rebellions did not stop. Why? Their explanation was direct. The people suffered from garrison duty, transport labor, construction work, and heavy taxes. So they asked the emperor to temporarily stop the Afang Palace project and reduce frontier service and transport duties. One line in the Shiji says, "It was all because garrison duty, transport, and labor were bitter, and the taxes were heavy." This was not rebellion. It was policy correction. The ministers were not saying that the emperor was illegitimate. They were saying the pressure on the people had become too heavy. But the second emperor did not treat this as advice. He treated it as a loyalty problem. To him, the palace projects, frontier burdens, law, and imperial commands were part of the first emperor's legacy. To stop them seemed like rejecting the first emperor. So the officials were punished. Feng Kuji and Feng Ji said, "Generals and chancellors do not suffer humiliation." Then they killed themselves. Li Si was imprisoned, and later Zhao Gao pushed the case further, leading to his execution. When ministers described the cause of the crisis, the emperor did not see reality. He saw a fence. By 207 BCE, the situation became worse. Zhang Han and other Qin generals were still fighting on the front lines. Julu became a key battlefield. Xiang Yu led Chu forces north to rescue Zhao, and Qin military pressure increased. At this time, Zhang Han feared punishment from the court. He sent Sima Xin into the capital to ask for instructions. But Zhao Gao refused to receive him. Sima Xin became afraid and escaped back to the army. When he returned to Zhang Han, he said, "Zhao Gao controls affairs inside the court. If the general has merit, he will be killed. If he has no merit, he will also be killed." This line was devastating. It meant that frontline commanders no longer trusted the central government. If victory could bring death, and failure could also bring death, then fighting for Qin no longer looked like service. It looked like being consumed by a palace that could not be trusted. Soon after, Zhang Han and others surrendered to the rebel states. Qin did not only lose a general, it lost one of its last major military forces capable of organized resistance. In the same year came the story known as calling a deer a horse. The date was the 3rd year of the second emperor's reign, on the day Jihai in the 8th month. The Shiji says, Zhao Gao wanted to make a move but feared that the ministers would not obey, so he first set up a test. He brought a deer before the second emperor and said, "It is a horse." The second emperor laughed and said, "Is the chancellor mistaken? He calls a deer a horse." Then the emperor asked the ministers around him. Some remained silent. Some, trying to please Zhao Gao, said it was a horse. Some said it was a deer. The Shiji then says that Zhao Gao secretly used the law against those who had said it was a deer. After that, the ministers feared Zhao Gao. This should not be read only as a strange anecdote. Zhao Gao knew the difference between a deer and a horse. The second emperor also saw the deer at first. The point was to test who still dared to say what they saw. The animal itself was not the center. The real question was, who had the power to define reality? If Zhao Gao said a deer was a horse, every minister had to choose. Trust the eyes, or obey Zhao Gao. Silence meant survival. Agreement meant submission. Truth became danger. From this moment, the problem inside the Qin court was no longer only filtered information. Fact itself had become a test of obedience. When this happened, the outside empire was already close to collapse. Across the eastern regions, anti-Qin forces were rising. The old names of Yan, Zhao, Qi, Chu, Han, and Wei had returned. Liu Bang had also entered Wu Pass and was approaching the Qin heartland. The Shiji says, east of the passes, most had turned against Qin officials and responded to the rebel states. The external reality was clear. But inside the palace, Zhao Gao was still testing who obeyed him. This is the bitter irony of the late Qin court. Outside the palace, Qin armies were failing. Inside the palace, ministers were being forced to admit that a deer was a horse. The Second Emperor was not completely without information. He had heard of Zhou Zhang's advance. He knew that rebels were rising. He had even seen the deer. But every time reality entered the court, its meaning was changed by power. Rebellion became ministerial failure. Advice became disloyalty. A deer became a test. This is why the Second Emperor could not see his empire. Not because the empire had no voice, but because every voice had to pass through the fear Zhao Gao created. By this point, Zhao Gao was no longer only controlling documents. He was controlling how the emperor encountered reality. After Li Si died, the administrative channel weakened. After the ministers became afraid, the channel of advice weakened. After Zhang Han surrendered, the military channel weakened. After the deer and horse test, even fact itself lost stability inside the court. The Second Emperor was still emperor, but he was no longer truly governing the empire. He sat inside the palace. He heard filtered words. He saw altered reality. He depended more and more on Zhao Gao. And the more he depended on Zhao Gao, the less able he became to judge him. Zhao Gao's most dangerous power was not simply that he killed people. It was that he made the emperor lose contact with the real world. When an emperor can see the empire only through one man, he no longer sees the empire. He sees only what that man allows him to see. Soon, Zhao Gao would also realize something. The Second Emperor could no longer protect him. Instead, the emperor was becoming a burden. In the next episode, the question will no longer be how Zhao Gao controlled the emperor. It will be this: what happens when the emperor himself is no longer useful?
Thanks for watching The Dragon Archive. Every story here begins in the shadows, but returns to the records. If you want more stories from Chinese history, emperors, rebels, assassins, philosophers, and forgotten kingdoms, follow the archive. The past is not gone. It is waiting to be read again.